What's up, Planeswalkers? Theox6 back with some more Magic the Gathering spoiler card discussion. Today we're going to be going over the July 24th cards, as I do this one-day stagger, just so I make sure I'm not missing any cards in between days. So, first we're going to start talking a little bit about the problems that people are having with the Jund deck, the black-red-green deck. I believe at this point we have had all three commanders spoiled. Two of which we'll be going over today. The other is Lord Windgrace. Wizards has said that people were asking for a land deck, or land commanders, especially in Jund. So they made Windgrace, or I believe that what they said was they made the Jund deck to be a lands deck, right? However, Thantis and the I think it's like Gyrus or Gyrus, the Hydra, don't have anything to do with lands, and a lot of people are upset about this. Now, technically, they did make Lord Windgrace, so you do still have a Jund colored land commander, but people wanted options, and the fact that the red-blue deck is getting Tawnos, Brainchild, or whatever the heck the creepy Mer's name is, and Saheeli, all of which are artifact commanders, right? They do slightly different things, which is, I think, what people wanted from the land commanders. But, you know, Saheeli is the planeswalker. Tawnos copies triggered and activated abilities, which is something you build around. And then the merman, he does stuff with artifact tokens, or technically artifact tokens, but whatever. So, you know, those are all artifact commanders that do a slightly different thing with said artifacts, and I think that's what people were wanting from the Jund commanders, and that isn't necessarily what we got, right? I think both of the other commanders that we did get are, you know, they do feel Jund, but they're just not what people were expecting, and the expectation that Wizards gave was that this is going to be a land matters deck, not a +1/+1 counter deck or a make people attack deck, you know. So there's a bit of disquiet in the community right now, and I think honestly it's fair, right? Like Jund already has commanders that care about +1/+1 counters, right? I think Jund has a commander that cares about the graveyard, which is what Gyrus does. So I think they did themselves a little bit of a disservice by speaking the way they did. I mean, obviously, I think this was not a. Essentially, I just think that Wizards misspoke, right? They saw that they were printing Lord Windgrace as the head of the deck, and that one of the themes of the deck, because often these commander decks do have several sub-themes, one of these themes was lands, so they said, you know, we made the deck to be a lands deck, and they should have said, we made a theme in the deck to be lands. So I think, frankly, it was just a slip-up on Wizards' part. Do I wish that the other Jund commanders were different variations on lands matter? Yes, I do, 100%. Options, I think, are great, because if you want to play a Jund land deck, you essentially have to play Lord Windgrace, right? And I want to see as much variation out of the EDH community, as it were, as possible. Just because I think variation is just more fun. You know, if you want to build a land deck, and someone in your playgroup has a Lord Windgrace land deck, you're going to be less inclined to build a deck that you might want to play just because someone else has essentially the same deck as you, right? So, I don't know. I totally understand the frustration. I think it's maybe a little bit much in terms of zealousness on like Reddit and stuff. But, you know, with that said, let's actually start talking about the darn cards. So this is Thantis Warweaver. 3 black, red, green, 3 and a Jund for a spider, which is cool. I know one of my friends was talking about making a spider deck in these colors, because I think this is good for that. It's a 5/5 with vigilance and reach, so right there, it's a pretty decent stat line. All creatures attack each combat if able, so we are forcing things to get down and dirty, which is cool. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, put a 1/1 counter on Thantis. So, notably, this does count each and every creature. So if your opponent attacks you with 2 creatures, it gets 2 counters. The fact that it has vigilance means you are totally fine attacking and still being able to block. Unfortunately, it doesn't have like any sort of evasion, so the counters are probably not going to be used very efficiently. And this is kind of just a disincentive for your opponents to be attacking you in the first place. So I don't actually see this getting very many counters. I think it's probably a fine card in some sort of deck that takes advantage of things like curses, especially from the earlier commander sets that care about people attacking your opponents. That way you get some sort of benefit out of, even though you're probably not going to end up being attacked because of Thantis. I think the card's fine. It's a little disappointing just because of what I talked about earlier. Since this, I think, is on color, it's just not. It's not the theme that people were asking for. I don't know of anyone who's excited about this card based on anything other than the fact that it's a spider. I also want to touch a little bit on the art, and I try to stay away from art discussions because there's a lot of old school people who say like the art now is like too CG and garbage and all this nonsense, and it's like it's too the same, and I disagree wholeheartedly. I really like where the majority of the art is at right now. I think that having this cohesiveness makes the world feel more real, because if I go outside and I look at a building, right, I'm going to see similar buildings in terms of like how they look aesthetically. Obviously, if you go to a different country, it's different. But Magic's worlds, like Magic's entire worlds, are essentially like one country, right? They focus on just one cultural area. So you expect the architecture to be the same. You expect people to dress a certain way. You expect things to look a certain way. And I think that congruency is very important. And I have no problem with digital art. I think digital art is a tool, just like oil painting, sculptures or types of art. You know, I have no problem with that. This card looks like a screen grab from a game, though. And it very well might just be the way the reds pop off of the greens. I'm not sure if it's just the color choice. Like, I love the webbing. The background is a little, like I have no idea where this card is. And I think if there was some sort of indication, like if it was on, like, an obelisk or something, it would be a little less egregious to me. But, like, to my eye, it just looks strange. It looks off. There's something about it that doesn't sit right with me. And maybe that was intentional. Intentional. It is a spider, so it's kind of meant to be creepy. So I don't know. I'm actually really curious what you guys think about current Magic art, previous Magic art, etc., etc. I've been talking about this darn card for long enough. Furious Storm is a really cool card. So apparently this is a cycle of spells that count how many times you've cast your commander. I think I misspoke a little bit yesterday's video. So you'll have the base spell and then one additional for each time you've cast it. So if you've not cast your opponent, or if you've not cast your commander at all the game, you still get the base spell, right? So baseline, this is 2 red, 2 double red for an instant. Copy target instant or sorcery spell, you may choose new targets for the copy, right? So you get that base spell, and when you cast the spell, copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone. And you can choose new targets. So I think I misspoke last video, so that's my clarification. I mean, this spell is good. You know, Wild Ricochet is often played. You know, you can get some interesting swings there. I have a twinned Riku deck situation. I have a creature version and a spell version because, darn it, I want to live the dream at one point of playing a two-headed giant game where one of us is playing creature and one of us is playing spell. So one has a bunch of clones and creature copies and all this nonsense, and then the other one has a bunch of big spells and a bunch of cards that copy spells. So this is definitely a card that's going to go in. I think it's a totally fine card. The fact that, so Wild Ricochet, you, I think, gain control of the card's targets, and you get a copy. So with this one, you don't gain control of the initial target, but I mean, if you cast your commander once, it's essentially the same as Wild Ricochet. And if you cast them twice, you're getting 3 copies of an instant or sorcery. And I think the level of value there is pretty good when you're in the long game of a commander. So I think this is a totally fine card. Gonna be in similar slots in those big spell decks. Next up is Windgrace's Judgment. I love these kind of just jund valued cards. I love Violent Ultimatum, which I said in yesterday's video. I love cards like Decimate. When I can just destroy a bunch of things that of my choice, I love it. So Windgrace's Judgment is 3 black-green, 3 and a Golgari. Actually, I shouldn't do that. I should use the guild names as hybrid names. Yeah, so it's 3 black-green. For an instant, which is very good. For any number of opponents, destroy target non-land permanent that player controls. So you can't hit your own things, which is a little unfortunate because maybe your opponent donated something to you that you don't want, but that's fine. Also, this is a choice, right? You can it's any number of opponents, so you can choose to leave someone out. Now, there's been a little bit of discussion on why this is actually bad, because with something like I think it's Grasp of Fate. I think it's Grasp of Fate. You have to choose a permanent from each player, and in a kind of political game like EDH. Having the ability to say it's not my choice is very helpful, because if there's something on the field that you definitely want to get rid of, then your opponent, your other opponents might just be like, okay, it's fine. This is the card that you have that's able to get rid of this thing that both of us want to get rid of, and you have to target something of mine. So they can't really hold it against you. It's a choice, so they can, which is very interesting. I definitely I love cards that can be given a political angle in Commander. I think to an extent in a lot of playgroups that has been downplayed recently, and I would love a return to form for that. But also, it's just a fine card. Like in a 4-player game, which I think is what people usually play EDH as. This is just a 5-mana instant that destroys 3 of anything. It can't hit lands, which I don't really care. But I mean, even once you get to the point where it's a 3-player game, this destroys 2 of anything that you want, and you can compare this to Sylvan. Oh gosh, Sylvan Reclamation. I think it's the one with I think it's 3 green-white with basic land cycling, and you just exile 2 artifacts or enchantments at instant speed. But this can hit anything. It doesn't exile, so it's just comparable, right? The cost level is comparable. So I think it's a pretty good card. I think it's probably going to end up being a staple in black-green decks, and something like removal being a staple, I think is totally fine. Next up, we have a sweet flash of the past. We have Sancha, Sleeper Agent. Sancha was integral to some of the Weatherlight stories. In the background, I think that is Cabal Stronghold, maybe? Volrath Stronghold? I don't remember. I'm not as versed on the old lore as I probably should be. Sancha is a 1 black-red, 5/5 minion. Hilarious. I'm a little disappointed that she's not also human. I guess that doesn't fit on the text, which is stupid, but whatever. As Sancha enters the battlefield, an opponent of your choice gains control of it. So it doesn't target, so you can just force someone to have this. Sancha attacks each combat if able, and can't attack its owner or planeswalkers its owner controls. Very cool. So you can give this to someone else, and you can't get hit by it. 3 generic mana. Sancha's controller loses 2 life, so that's someone else. You've given... What the heck? No, go away with that. I didn't want that music on. I didn't like it. But yeah, as you saw, that was just some more duels songs. So this isn't going to be you. It's its controller. But the person who activates the ability draws a card. So any player can activate this ability, including the person who has control of it. This card's just hilarious. It's just like a black-red hate card, right? You just give it to someone and you're like, hey, I gave you a 5/5. You're going to probably lose life. You're going to make enemies because you're the one attacking people with a 5/5 on turn 3. I just gave it to you. Go ahead. Then you can just pay life, or pay 3 mana to draw cards. It is unfortunate that like anyone can use that mana to draw cards because sometimes people do have turns where they don't really do anything. This really helps blue players who are holding up counterspells, and they're able to just cycle that mana. So that is something that you have to contend with. But you are running black and red, so there's plenty of cards that punish drawing cards. So you definitely can have this as like an alternate to something like Nekusar, right? Where you're disincentivizing people to draw cards. You're playing a lot of cards that deal continuous burn damage to players. Something like that. I think is where Sancha will shine. And you don't even have to play her as the commander. You can play her in the 99 in a deck like Nekusar. but I think regardless, I think she's a really flavorful card. I think she's really cool. I don't know how much play she'll see, but I think she has potential to be a really good commander for a black-red, like, aggressive, overtime burn deck. Emissary of Grudges. I'm not sure I like the design of this card. I think choosing things secretly and something like a Drafted Conspiracy is good. I should read off what the freaking card is. Emissary of Grudges is a 5 and a red, 6/5, with flying and haste. It's an Ifrit. That's like a Djinn. As it enters the battlefield, secretly choose an opponent. You can't even choose yourself, which I don't know why you would, but you can. I like when Wizards gives options. I don't like limiting options, but whatever. Reveal the player you choose. That's the cost for the activated ability. Choose new targets for target spell or ability if it's controlled by the chosen player and if it targets you or a permanent you control. Activate this ability once. This card has so many limitations, and it does something I think that's strange. I think choosing things secretly is fine in Black Border. I just think it's better in like a draft environment. Like it feels so strange to see this card. Like if you're just playing a game of Commander with friends and you like cast it, and it as it enters, you like you quickly scribble something down like in your palm or something. It feels strange. It's fine. It just feels strange. But then for its ability, you don't even get the option of countering it. You have to choose new targets for spell or ability. Like obviously it has to be controlled by the chosen player. That's fine. That makes sense. And it has to target you or permanent you control. I think that is like one restriction too many. Like you already have to jump through all of these hoops to have an ability that you can only use once. Let it be any target. You have a grudge against them. Maybe the grudge is just trying to screw them over. I don't see why this has to be so restrictive. I think the card's still fine. Like, it is a 6/5 flyer with haste. Like, if that haste wasn't there, the card would be utter garbage. But it does, I mean, it does have haste. It is evasive. Has great art. But, I don't know. I'm a little disappointed. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the card design is fine and the restrictions aren't too much. I just don't think this card's going to see very much play because of the amount of restrictions. Lola Subordinate, some more Lieutenant. This is a 2 and a black 3/1 zombie with menace, and Lieutenant at the beginning of your combat on your turn. If you control your commander, each opponent loses 3. I have a Gisa zombie deck. It's a ton of fun. I love it. Probably one of my favorite commanders. I have like 20 or something. I'm not sure if this makes the cut. Yeah, I'm not sure if this makes the cut. Having 1 toughness is really unfortunate. There's plenty of ways that just having 1 toughness, it just means it's going to die. I wouldn't... The problem is, like, I wouldn't know how to change this, right? Like, making it have 2 toughness, the menace is less valuable because you'd also need to reduce the power. I'm not sure. But the effect is fine. Each opponent losing 3 is really nice, but in my Gisa deck, you know, I already have a ton of cards that do that, right? What is it? No, not Zombie Trailblazer. Darn, there's a 2-mana zombie that taps to make everyone lose life equal to the number of zombies in play. There's things like Plague Belcher. There are goodness. There's essentially another Plague Belcher that I just can't remember. It's a 4-mana card. There's plenty of ways for you to just drain your opponent. I think what the deck would need more is life gain. So I think this card would actually be better if each opponent only lost like 1 or 2 life and you gained life equal to the life lost. The card would be a lot more incentive to play. I think that deck has plenty of ways to just murder your opponent. So I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm definitely going to try it out, but I'm not sure. Now, talking about it in a context of non-zombie deck, this is also just a totally fine card in a black kind of Bernie deck, you know? You're going to want to whittle down your opponents, and this hits everyone for 3. If you're in a 4-player game, that's 9 damage a turn. So, I mean, I think that's probably fine. It also, you know, Lieutenant is an incentive to play your commanders, and I want to see more decks that are actively playing their commanders. So I think it's a fun card. I don't think it's a staple, even in zombie decks. There's just so many good zombie cards that I don't know if this pushes anything out, especially in the 3-drop, 3/1 slot. You know, we have plenty of cards for that, so I don't know. Nesting Dragon is awesome. Say 3 red, 3 and double red for a 5/4 flying dragon. Landfall, when a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/2 red dragon egg creature token with defender, and when this creature dies, create a 2/2 red dragon creature token with flying and fire breathing. So I mean, essentially, this makes a dragon egg that turns into a dragon hatchling, I think is what it is, or Hellcat hatchling, one of those. For each land, I think that's fine. I think this is fine in a dragon deck like the Dragon. You know, it gets discounted, so 4 mana 5/4 flyer that you can play lands to get more dragons from is fine. It's just a value in a landfall deck. I think this card is pretty good. It's not insane. It's not super undervalued, I don't think. Just for its cost and what it does. I think it's totally fine. Getting 0/2s is actually like getting the 0/2s instead of just getting the 2/2s initially is actually like really fine because of the prevalence of board wipes in EDH. So like if you can accrue like 3 dragon eggs, right? Your opponents are going to be a lot less likely to they're going to be a lot less likely to wrath because you're going to then get some 2/2s that have fire breathing, and you're not going to need to commit to the board as much because you can just pump the red mana into your whelps. I think this is a pretty good card. I look forward to playing it in my Dragon deck. Blood Tracker, 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 2/2 vampire wizard. Oh, it's a wizard. I didn't realize that. Flying, black, pay 2 life to put a 1/1 counter on Blood Tracker. Cool. When a Blood Tracker leaves the battlefield, draw a card for each 1/1 counter on it. So this is good in a few different strategies. Obviously, this is fine in a vampire deck. This is also fine in like an Aloro deck, where you have an excess of life and you're just looking for something to do with that life. If you're not trying to like be a control Aloro deck, if you're trying to be a little bit more aggressive, play a lot of cards that siphon your own life in order to get power. That's a good Aloro strategy. It also is just good in a +1/+1 counter deck. I think this card is probably really good in Rayhan. So I don't have a vampire deck, but I do have an Aloro deck and a Rayhan deck. So I'm going to try this card in both of them, and I think it's probably going to be okay. Unfortunately, it doesn't do anything until you pump more mana into it, so it kind of is a 5 mana 3/3. And when you look at it like that, it's not great. It's 5 mana 3/3. When it dies, draw a card. It costs 2 life when it enters the battlefield, etc., etc. But you know, I think that the fact that you're able to get slow incremental value over time with it, I think it's good. If you have a way to gain life in the deck, it's even better. My Rayhan is paired with Ikra, the one that gains life, so this goes really well in that deck. And you can just start pumping late game. You can just pump a bunch of black into it in response to like a board wipe, and then you get a lot of value back. So I think this card is probably fine. I don't think it's a staple card. I think it's very similar to the Nesting Dragon, where you play it in the decks where it has synergy, and I think it's probably going to be pretty okay for you. Lola Guardian is our green lieutenant. It is 4 and a green for a 4/4 Rhino with trample. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. It's pretty good. It's a little slow, but in +1/+1 counter decks, this is probably still going to be a fine card, because you are going to be getting value on each creature you control, which I think is very valuable. Even just this plus your commander, that's 2 +1/+1 counters a turn. That's 4 total with doubling season. It's what go to 2, 8, like a lot with doubling season and like primal vigor, no, primal something, the other enchantment that's like doubling season. I think this card is fine. I'm gonna try it in my Rayhan deck. I don't think you play this in a deck that isn't either a go wide token strategy or a +1/+1 counters deck, especially since like the rate isn't super good by itself. Like if this is your top deck, it's not great because it's just a a 5-mana 4/4 with trample. Like that's like a draft card. But in one of the decks that can really take advantage of the +1 counters going on specific creatures or going on a wide array of creatures, I think this is probably going to be totally fine. Raledi Scramble. Red gets a wacky card. 2 red, 2 and a double red. Put target permanent you own on the bottom of your library. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card that shares a card type with that permanent. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This also has retrace. You may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a land in addition to paying its other costs. So this card hits something you own, not just something you control. So if someone takes something from you, you can go ahead and use it. Unfortunately, this is a sorcery speed, which I think you kind of have to do mostly for retrace cards, just to balance them. But this is a sorcery, which means you can't, like, in response to the Insurrection, you can't remove some of your big creatures from it. But if someone does have something of yours, you can go ahead and screw them over with this card. And you're not going to whiff on this. You might whiff in that the card you get is a little bit less valuable than the card you took away. But you're always going to get some card that shares a card type with that permanent. And you put it on the library, or you put it on the battlefield immediately. You still get triggers from it. This only does cost 4, so I think it's pretty reasonable cost. Late game, if you already have like all of the mana you need, you can just start dumping lands for this, upgrading or attempting to upgrade essentially all of your cards. This can be good in like a kind of Madcap Experiments type deck, where you play a lot of like artifact, or like a lot of token producers, and very few creatures, and all of your creatures are like really strong, things like Platinum Empyrean or something like that. It's also just fine in a ETB value deck. I don't know how much red plays a role in that, but you know, maybe this helps along the red ETB decks that are trying to get out there. So I think it's a very fun card. I think it's fine. Also, the art is fantastic. There's like a weird dinosaur, a dog, an orangutan with a freaking tentacle. I think it's great art. It's very like unset art in a normal set, and I think that's really cool. Yeah, not much to say about it. I think it's a totally fun card. Gyrus, the other Junt commander that is not land matters. It is essentially +1/+1 counter matters and graveyard. So it's X. It's Gyrus, Waker of Corpses, not Walker, Waker. X black red green for a 0/0 Hydra. Enters the battlefield with a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana spent to cast it. So importantly, this will include the command tags, and I think it's very important that they worded it like this. So let's say you've cast it once already, so you have a command tax of 2. So baseline, this is going to cost 5 mana. If you pay 5 mana for it, you're still going to, like, you have X is 0. You're paying 5 mana. It's the 3 and then the 2 for the tax. You still get 5 1/1 counters. I think that's very important. The fact that they worded it like this is very good. Additionally, when it attacks, you may exile target creature card with lesser power from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card that's tapped and attacking, exile the token. This is why I don't like this card. I think it's like an interesting Hydra commander. I think it's fine. Important of note, this card doesn't really work with Hydras, so you can't even make it a great Hydra commander. It's just fine because of the colors. Hydras will come in with 0 power, because Hydras often have X's in their cost. So you can't even make a good Hydra tribal with this deck, which is very unfortunate. Additionally, it exiles the reanimation target. It doesn't even just sack it, which is stupid. Like, I understand that you don't want things to be abused, but why would I play this as a reanimation general? Across any of the other reanimation generals. Scarab God also exiles, but Scarab God can hit other people's graveyards. If Scarab God could only hit your graveyard, the fact that it exiles would make that card significantly worse, because you're already drawing from a dwindling pool, or you're not dwindling. Sorry, you're already drawing from a small pool, since you can only hit your graveyard. Making it dwindle by having them be exiled is so unnecessary. I don't think this card would have been too strong if you're able to get things back. There are plenty of reanimation strategies like Carador where you can just keep getting things back. Marin of Clan Neltoth, right? Those cards can just keep getting cards back. They don't have to deal with exile. And the fact that this does, I think, makes this card nearly impossible to make a prime EDH general. I could be super wrong in my assessment, but I think that line of text at the end is just super unfortunate. If it was sacrifice the token at the end of combat, that's fine. You don't even get it for a full turn cycle. You get ETB triggers, sure. You don't get death triggers, and you can't get the card again. So not only do you have to make sure that you're attacking, you're making Gyrus big enough that you can hit the cards that you want, because it's already restricted, because you have to have a creature that's smaller than this. So you need the mana ramp to make this card large. You need creatures in your graveyard, so you have to dump them there somehow. And you need cards that you don't want necessarily to get back multiple times. So like, you won't even want to play an incidental reanimator package. You know, you're dumping cards in your graveyard anyway. Maybe Gyrus just never gets to attack, so you do have things like reanimate or animate dead. But you're not going to want to play those, because maybe early on Gyrus did attack and you had nothing in your graveyard, or you have one thing in your graveyard. You know, you have no options. It's very unfortunate that they decided to go along with a card like this. I don't see how this would have been too good if it just sacrificed. And I could be wrong, but like, it doesn't even add to your own graveyard. Maybe if like when it entered, you could like mill yourself, right? Because then you're at least adding to what Gyrus is trying to do. But here you have nothing. You have none of that. Like, you have to commit slots in the 99 to put cards into your own graveyard in order to get them back to work with your commander. And I think that's just too many hoops to jump through. I just don't think this card is going to be very good because of that. The art is fantastic. The name is fantastic. The first block of text is fantastic. They worded it fantastically for that first part. But the second part just falls away. It has way too many restrictions and not enough support on the card itself. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about Gyrus. Like, besides the fact that it's not a land commander, because I've already talked about that. That's fine. Just the fact that I think they gimped the card from the start, and I think that's unfortunate, because like everything else about this card I think is really cool. Whipchunk Hydra, another card I think is really cool. Another Hydra I think is really cool. It's a chameleon Hydra. Look at that derp face. I love it so much. It's 5 and a green for a 4/4 Lizard Hydra with reach. When Whiptongue Hydra enters the battlefield, destroy all creatures with flying. Put a 1/1 counter on Whiptongue Hydra. For each creature, destroy this way. So it's a different way to put 1/1 counters on a Hydra. So it has a base 4/4. I think that's pretty cool. This, fun fact, is something that you can reanimate with Gyrus or whatever his name is. So I mean, that's cool. It's helpful for green decks, because even though green does have a lot of ways to destroy flyers, it still does struggle with flyers because it doesn't have many actual flyers, and the cards that do deal with flyers aren't very great. So this is essentially a bane of progress for flyers, which is pretty cool. Even if your opponent, like one opponent has a Baneslayer Angel, the other one has a Consecrated Sphinx, this is still a totally fine card. It's 6 mana for a double removal spell, and it becomes a 6/6 with reach. I think that's good. Heck, even if your opponent has one creature, right? This is 6 mana to remove a good flyer, get a 5/5 that has reach. Like, I think even with one flyer, this card's good. If you're playing up against a deck that runs a lot of like flying tokens, maybe Drakes or Thopters, this card becomes huge fast. It doesn't have trample, but that's probably fine. But additionally, you can just play it in a deck that cares about +1/+1 counters. Bane of Progress is a good removal in those types of decks. It does hit your enchantments, but you know, it's still played. At least that's what I've seen. And this is a nice way to deal with flyers. I think I do have a slight problem with flyers in my Rayhan deck, so this is a decent curve topper. It's more of an aggressive deck, so this is definitely on the high end of creatures I play, but it still seems pretty fine. I really like this card as a role player. Loyal Apprentice, I think, is my least favorite lieutenant card. So this is 1 and a red for a 2/1 with haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, create a 1/1 Thopter creature token with flying. That token gains haste until end of turn. So obviously this is meant to be played in a more aggressive deck, I think. Or a deck that cares about having Thopters, like having artifacts. But it just feels so strange to me that you make a card that wants to stick around in order to gain advantage off its lieutenant ability. but that's also super vulnerable. Like, it's a 2-mana 2/1. It also has haste, so it tries to incentivize you to attack. But you're just going to lose the card. Right, the other lieutenants are fine because you can just keep them back, or they have evasion or something like that, or they're strong enough that you're probably going to be able to get into the red zone without too much of a fear of losing them. Or even if you do, you're going to take something good out. But what you get out of this card, I think, is kind of bad. Like, I think it's weak, and I think it just goes against what you're trying to do with Lieutenant. Like, Lieutenant seems like for this round, Lieutenant seems like something that you want your creatures to stick around. Kind of just accrue value, sitting next to your commander, not really doing anything. This card is like, attack with me, and I think that's just strange. It doesn't really jive with me. It's probably fine in an aggressive deck. It's probably fine in an artifact deck, where you just choose not to attack with it, and it just is pumping out Thopters every turn. It just feels strange. Maybe I'm wrong, and like. So obviously you don't have to attack with it, and I get that, but they put haste on it to make you like want to. Like, I feel like this card would make, I feel like this card would jive better with Lieutenant if instead it had First Strike instead of haste. But obviously, like, the idea is that like the master is telling the apprentice to run around and get things, so that's why she has haste. I don't know. I think it's a little bit strange, but yeah. Crash of Rhino Beetles is hilarious. It is a 4 and a green, sorry, 5/5 with trample, and it's an insect. Crash of Rhino Beetles gets +10/+10 as long as you control 10 or more lands. This card's hilarious. I'm a little disappointed that Wizards doesn't make beasts as much, because I have a Mile deck that's I actually have 3 Mile decks. They're all different, but whatever. But I try to keep mostly beasts. But they like stop printing a lot of beasts, which is unfortunate. I feel like beasts should be like a class type instead of a race. Because one of the reasons they stopped doing beasts is because it's not like there's no like racial identity to beasts. Like an insect, you know what an insect is. But when you say beast, you know, like what exactly is a beast? So I think it would be cool if this was like an insect beast, right? I don't think Wizards is going to change their mind on that, unfortunately, but I wish that they did. Anyway, this card is funny. It doesn't technically do anything. I'm definitely going to put it in my my Mile deck just to give it a try. I do play like a couple worms here and there, things that are like wild that aren't like angels or dragons or all that nonsense. I'll try it out. It is like a 5-mana 5/5 trampler is not great. A 5-mana 15/15 trampler is probably fine, and like in EDH, you get to that point of the game relatively easily. So I think this card is actually like not getting as much respect on the forums as it deserves, and I look forward to trying it out. That's, I mean, not much to say about a little beat stick. So, and last for today, Octopus Umbra, 3 blue, 3 double blue, for an enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature has base power and toughness 8/8, and has whenever this creature attacks, you may tap target creature with power 8 or less, with totem armor. So if enchanted creature would be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy this aura. I love totem armor. I think that's one of the coolest keywords or mechanics that came out of Rise of Eldrazi. I think totem armor is one of the great ways that Wizards has tried to combat the 2-for-1-ness of auras. Additionally, I think this is a pretty good card. It is a buff on essentially any creature you'd like. For just 5 mana, it becomes an 8/8 and can tap things down. Notably, it doesn't freeze them, it doesn't tap them down and keep them tapped, but I think that's fine. You can tap down their biggest blocker that's a threat to you, and just make them block with something else. Maybe they have a single chump blocker and like a card that they're not going to want to block with, you can tap down the chump blocker. Importantly, it's not even just whoever you're attacking, right? You can attack someone who doesn't have any creatures, and then tap down a second player who has a single creature, and then a third player can attack that second player, you know? So there are definitely different things you can do with this card, and because it has totem armor, I think this is a pretty good card. It does make me hesitate a little bit, thinking that Wizards might be making the aura deck too focused on creature auras. I'm hoping that they do print at least one new non-creature aura, because I think that's where a lot of the fun from auras come from, is not the put them on a creature, not the pants auras, but you know, the paradox hazes, the curse, those types of things I think are really interesting. So I want to see a little bit more of that. Yeah, I mean, I think this card's probably fine. In general, it's probably not gonna see a ton of play. But I mean, I don't know. It's a big totem armor. I think maybe it's fine. Notably, since it is base power and toughness, this works with other enchantments pretty well. So if you are going to be putting this in a Voltron deck, it does work really well. It elevates the base power and toughness up to 8/8, and then the enchantment stack from there. So this probably a fine include in a Voltron decks. It might be too slow. I'm not entirely sure. I don't really play Voltron decks too much, but yeah. Yeah, with that, that's all of the discussion for today. Let me know what you think about any of these cards. Let me know if you'd like me to change the format. Let me know if my audio mixing was a little off. I'm still not entirely sure what levels the music in the background or my voice should be at for these types of videos, because it is different. But yeah, let me know if you liked it by tapping that like button, adding a subscription to your mana pool, and casting a comment to the comment section down below. And until next time, all will be one.